Hello, welcome back to the Infinity Stone podcast. We are here to talk about the newly released Captain Marvel. As always, I am Matt, and with me is Andy.
Hey, Matt, we're actually topical.
I know, it's amazing. We've seen a movie once, and, like opening weekend, and we're already talking about it, which brings up something we should probably warn people about. We're going to be talking about a movie that you may not have seen if you're just subscribed. So, spoilers are ahead.
Yeah, and I think we'll maybe try to avoid the major spoilers. Like maybe we don't talk about the end credit scene or something like that. But for the most part, yeah, if you're somebody who is concerned about spoilers, you might not want to listen. If you want our very quick recommendation or not, I'd say, yeah, if you've been listening to this podcast, you were probably a fan of MCU movies, and thus I believe you will find enjoyment from this one.
Yeah. Also, this podcast will be a little different than usual because we have a special guest that will be joining us for our final segment to talk about, maybe a quality that this movie has that the other MCU movies don't. So, mysterious. Ooh, yeah. But next, when we come back, we're going to do some trivia.
About to show these boys how we do it. You ready?
Higher, further, faster, baby.
Yes, babe.
Higher. Further. Faster. Higher. Further. Faster. Try to keep up.
All right, we're back, and we're going to start this week's episode with the trivia. That way I'll be able to ride a high throughout the entire show, because I always win, and I will win tonight.
Right, and, assuming that we don't always start with trivia and then just splice it in later. Oh, no, I just revealed all
the secrets.
I
They
know.
sometimes film out of sequence. I hear they do that in the movies, too. All right, so those unaware, this is my son, Alex. He put in a lot of work last night to come up with trivia questions for a movie we just saw like 3 days ago. So, Alex, what's the first question?
And who's it to?
No, it's for Matt.
For Matt.
Okay. Whose voice is the Supreme Intelligence?
It's Annette Bening. It's the same. It's Marvel.
Yeah, doesn't it play the actress who plays her? I don't think it had a separate voice in it. So is it Annette Bening?
In person.
Yeah.
All right, there you go.
Okay.
One point for Matt.
Not just her voice.
Woo!
I'm like, did we see another Supreme Intelligence scene? No.
No.
All right, let me try.
How many cats play goose?
I believe there were 5.
Wrong.
Steel 4.
Yep.
Oh, you know what sucks is I was like going 4, 5, 4, 5, 4, 5, and oh no.
Oh no, I definitely took. I took
today.
notice of that one in the credits.
Oh, okay. This is the hubris that's come to defeat me here.
Yeah.
What do the Kree call Captain Marvel?
Vers or Veers, I guess is how they pronounce it. Yeah.
This is lame. You said these were hard. These are easy, and I was just off by a number because numbers are my foil.
Okay. You want to get a hard one?
No, I don't.
I think you're asking for it now.
Who played Captain Marvel's younger self?
A girl.
I mean, the actor.
Oh, they have names? Man, I don't know. Nobody knows. Her parents know. It's not somebody famous. Although, if you would ask me who played Monica Rambeau, I also don't know the answer to that. So
I think that's it's Latasha. I think something.
All
I'm not
except
positive.
no, that's
that's Monica Rambeau. Oh no, that's Monica. I think, but
Okay.
oh, no,
Anyway,
maybe that's Maria.
do you have
I don't know.
an
I
answer
have no
who
idea who
played
played the
young
young.
Captain
No,
Marvel?
of course not.
I
What,
have
you kidding?
2 answers.
Well, yeah. I
Oh,
guess.
okay.
Wait, Brie Larson played her when she was younger too.
Nah.
Go. What's the answers?
McKenna Grace, London Fuller.
Yeah, you asked for a
That
hard
second
one.
one isn't a name. That's a description. All right. Let's let Matt pile on here.
Yeah.
What does Pegasus stand for in the comic books?
Oh God.
I never knew it was an acronym. I knew Project Pegasus was in the comic books.
Oh man, I just saw this earlier today too. It's
No, using Google.
I'm trying to think. Andy, steal it.
I can't. I honestly didn't even know it was an acronym.
You posted it in one of the channels by accident yesterday.
What? No, not
I
me.
definitely saw you posting on one of the in our Slack yesterday. I swear to God.
Were you on
It's
my Slack?
Potential
yesterday?
Energy Group, alternate sources, United States. Don't give me that point. But that's what it stands for, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
This feels like knowledge I've never had in my life. All right. So this last one's worth like 4 points or something, right? Is that how it works?
No.
I have 3 more.
Three
Oh,
more.
yes, 3 more.
How
Oh,
long is
okay. So
this?
you get. Yeah. Wow. Okay.
Ask questions. I'll eventually get one right.
Okay, this is for you. Goose isn't actually a cat. What is he?
A flirkin.
Yeah, you have 1 point.
There we go. Good work, Andy.
What year does this movie take place?
1995.
Correct. This is
All right, this is it. Honestly, you've already won. Me scoring any amount of points would be unfair. But the final question.
Yeah. Final question.
what is Nick Fury's full name?
They just call him Fury. Nicholas.
Nicholas. Oh, what's his middle name? It's
Fury.
Nicholas.
I don't know, man.
I don't know. I don't know what his middle name is.
It's not Alexander, is it? That'd be crazy. Nicholas Alexander Fury?
No.
I don't know.
What's the answer?
Joseph.
Joseph Nicholas.
Nick
Joseph,
J.
yeah.
Fury. All right, well, that was fairly brutal, and I
Yeah.
did not enjoy it.
No.
How about the movie, Alexander? Did you enjoy it?
Yes.
Yeah, you like
I
it?
like Goose the cat.
Goose would be your favorite character.
I have a Goose Funko Pop
Awesome.
He just ran out and bought a couple of new ones.
today.
After he was done the movie, he's like, I want them all. And then I started listing some of the characters, like, oh, well, maybe not them. All right, so you liked it?
Yeah.
And you recommend it to others? Like, should other people?
Yes.
I mean, honestly, you probably shouldn't be watching this if you haven't seen it yet, because I'm guessing we're going to get a little spoilery, but, you know. At the same time, maybe you want to watch this to see whether you should, in which case, yes, and the mild spoilers ahead. All right, Alex, get to bed.
Maybe you should put on the front of the video spoiler alerts.
Maybe. We'll take that under advisement. Good night.
Name a detail so bizarre a scroll could never fabricate it.
A toast is cut diagonally, I can't eat it. You didn't need that, did you?
No, I didn't, but I enjoyed it.
Okay, your turn. Prove you're not a scroll.
And we're back, and Andy, I killed you. I trounced you, man. What happened there?
That was ugly.
Yeah, it was.
I think I'm more of a sprinter. I need 5 questions. I just don't have the endurance for those long trivia sessions.
Or maybe you just need to, have watched the movies multiple times to have the leg up on me. So
Certainly doesn't hurt.
but
and there was numbers. I don't like numbers, Matt.
Yeah, I've noticed that. I guess we just talk though about Captain Marvel. Andy, what were your thoughts about Captain Marvel?
I liked it and I didn't love it. And we'll get into the reasons why. But yeah, I mean, I had fun watching it. I enjoy certain aspects of it, but I also felt like it didn't do enough. And I think some of it we'll get into about why this feels a little like a phase 1 type movie. And when we were doing our rankings, I think, if anybody remembers, none of the phase 1s are particularly high until we get to Avengers, right? They were good for what they were.
You like first Avenger, you had that pretty high, but our consensus rankings, I think only the Avengers was the one phase 1 movie that ranked highly for both of us. And I agree. Yeah, this felt like a phase 1 movie. Thought that runs through my head that, I'll probably repeat multiple times throughout this, was that this movie came out 3-4 years ago, it would have felt very of a place with what Marvel was doing. And coming out now, it feels like it's a step back in a way. And it's not bad. I liked it. I just, as kind of like what you said, I didn't love it. And I feel like I'm going to probably have a lot of nits to pick in this podcast. I don't want that to kind of detract from the fact that, like, I did like the movie. But I think it's easier to kind of point out some of the ways in that it didn't meet some high expectations.
Yeah, and like it's just important to kind of where we're at in our superhero movie viewing, and especially MCU movies. It's like, yeah, we're coming off of Infinity War, Black Panther, Thor Ragnarok. Like these are a bunch of movies that like really felt like breaths of fresh air, doing new things. And I feel like Captain Marvel felt a little bog standard when it comes to superhero stories. A lot of similar beats because of the past setting. It was throwing us back into a world without superheroes. Yep. So in that sense, it didn't even. It felt a little phase 1 because most of the phase 1 movies are a world without superheroes because they're happening simultaneously, or in Captain America's case, in the distant past, or even just like what superhero movies used to be, where the universe around it was just one character. And again, that's could be a fine thing, especially if they gave us a bunch of new things, but it's just like you need to give me more, and I feel like it didn't do that. Now what it did give me is like a character and a performer I liked.
Yep.
Some good chemistry between her and the character we already knew in Sam Jackson. And by the end of the film, I am very excited to stay in a universe that Captain Marvel is a part of. But as of this one, it feels a little like introducing Doctor Strange, but without like the exciting visuals of Doctor Strange. It feels like an Ant-Man, but not as funny.
You took my two comparisons. I was gonna. This feels a lot like Doctor Strange, except without the visuals. Though I do think it. For me, Doctor Strange kind of lags a bit in the first part, and I don't think this has as much lag. I think this one kind of is more even keeled throughout. I think this one's also funnier than Doctor Strange. Like they got the banter down really well. Especially her and Sam Jackson have really good repartee going. And like you said, it's a character that by the end of the movie I really like. And I'm kind of excited to see, what they can do with the sequel. It doesn't mean that they're going to nail a sequel, but I feel like they felt themselves a little maybe shackled because they had to set because they felt they had to set it in the past, because they wanted to do a lot of different things with this character, that they couldn't tell a very specific story. And I think getting more specific with this character would cure, or with the story would cure so many flaws, and could make something very interesting. So it's definitely a movie where I think I'm more excited for the sequel than I am about this.
Yeah, and like it doesn't help that it is, the first part of the movie is set in the cosmic Marvel universe, and we've come accustomed to the cosmic universe being like the most fun way out there, and this is more like dark world cosmic universe, kind of like, and again, some of that is true to the character in that she's a militaristic character, and this is a militaristic thing, but it's just like it didn't have that life and energy from the start. She sparks with a bit of it, although it's intentionally for story purposes muted. She's not allowed to like literally spark as much as she will by the end. But just even there, it's like and where they lean is like, okay, we're back to the Kree, which was like the worst part of Guardians of the Galaxy. And
I think they did do a better job with the Kree in this movie though than they did with Guardians.
But I'd say these Kree for me were less interesting than the Nova Corps in Guardians.
Sure. Yeah, no, I think that's true. Yeah, the Nova Corps was allowed to have a lot of personality. And I kind of thought we'd be getting more personality from the team that she's a part of at the beginning of the movie, except that she's separated from them pretty quick and then they don't get any other development. We just see them again in one big sequence at the end and like, by that, they're static from the moment we meet them to that point. There is no development. We don't really know much about how she relates to them. And I kind of thought we'd be getting a bit more of that. But again, like this movie was trying to do a lot, and yet also not enough at the same time.
And for me, I felt like the biggest hindrance for me to like fully embrace this film is the decision to give Captain Marvel amnesia.
Yes.
For most of the film.
Thank you. I was going to talk about this too. I was actually going to say it for flaws, but yeah, go on. We'll talk about it now.
Well, I mean, I think I need to talk about it now because it encompasses everything that just is holding this movie back, and why, by the end, I'm like, yes, I want to see her in Avengers movies. I want to see Captain Marvel 2 because it will no longer have that. And like, I understand where they were going with it, but what the effect that it ends up having is our main character is a tabula rasa for most of the movie. Now, she does get to shine with a little bit of personality here and there, and those are the moments that, I like her. Yes. But it never gets to go all the way. She doesn't get to be as, engaging a character as some of the other characters that even carried Phase 1 movies because she doesn't know herself. Like, she literally is not Carol Danvers until the final act of the film. Right. So, how can we get to know and love Carol Danvers if, she doesn't even know who that is? And so
she says that. She says, I don't even know who I am. She says that. And the other problem with the amnesia, being a big part of this is that I don't think it allows her to have an arc. It doesn't allow her to have a character arc. And so at the end of the movie, the moments when we should be feeling catharsis, when we should be feeling, like this character has moved from one stage to another, I'm not sure she did. I can't describe really what the character arc is here. And I tried to a few times. I'm like, well, it's kind of like this, but not really. And it's kind of like this, but not fully. And, that's another problem with amnesia.
Yeah. And you can have a character without a past storyline and let that be a driving action of the story. I mean, like that's what powered Wolverine for much of the character's publication history. There was this movie called, Memento, where he was losing his memory throughout the whole film. And he's still, but what's missing is she doesn't seem like she's particularly driven to find out about her past. So as those drips and drabs start to come throughout the movie and probably more affecting our feelings, it comes to us before it ever comes to her. So it's not even a mystery for us that we're trying to hope to unravel because we have the knowledge that she doesn't have in so many of these instances. But she's trying to complete her mission. She's and it's fair that she's not searching for answers necessarily because it's not until she gets a little further into it that she even knows this is a place where answers to her past will happen. Right. But it's just like that's so when she finally starts to learn who she is, it isn't as big a cathartic moment as you're saying because that wasn't even her driving action in the first place. She was just trying to do right by her bosses for a lot of it.
Right. And the other thing about it is there's times when people in the movie like will say to her something like, oh, I think you're doing this for personal reasons. And yet her actions didn't really portray that. There's a few times in this movie where they're telling and not showing, and those moments I think really hurt the character. The other obvious one was at the beginning when Jude Law basically is like, this is what the Kree Skull War is, but you obviously know that, don't you? It's like, well, why'd you just tell us then? I mean, I know why they told us, but that was particularly inelegant. But
I wonder, like, this is the flaw maybe of the directors. They took two indie directors who have only done very small films. Now, that's what a lot of these sometimes blockbusters do. It's for one, that's how you can get them on the cheap and how you can get them within your system is you try, and some of it you can get some fresh young talent. But I don't know if they were up to this because I don't know that they added anything new to the genre of superheroes besides possibly, this is, now a woman, but even that's not new because we had it in Wonder Woman a few years ago, and we're going to get into that discussion more. But yeah, I don't know if they were up, and for action scenes, they probably didn't do a lot of the action scenes because that just seems to be the way Marvel does it. They have their in-house directors, but it's just I'm not sure they had a bigger vision for what a fresh take of this sort of story, and instead they wanted to do a personal story, and that would be great because they've done personal stories, except that the person doesn't know who she is, and it just kind of held me back.
I didn't think it got personal enough, and that's and so I think that's kind of what keeps it from elevating beyond this level of like, well, I liked it and I enjoyed the banner and some of the action was cool, but it just didn't elevate beyond that for me.
Yeah, and so then what ends up happening, because you have a character who is, for one, a soldier, which is something both parts of Carol's lives has been true. So she's a little more guarded, and also doesn't know who she is, and frankly doesn't know that, and is in a society that is not wanting her to be very curious about who she is. In fact, so keep all that in. Like the heart of the film has to be with other characters, right? So we get it a lot from Maria Rambeau and not from our hero. We get a lot of the energy, from Samuel Jackson, and she plays off of him, but more in a calmer, wry type fashion.
Right. And he's the wisecracking sidekick.
Yeah, which frankly, and we'll get into this as well, I'm not sure played well with what we know about Nick Fury. It played well in the scenes together. I thought they had good chemistry, but it's just like, I'm not getting it from the character I wanted it from, because I wanted to love Captain Marvel. Yeah. And I'll say this actually kind of mirrors my experience with the comic books. Yeah. So reason why Captain Marvel gets this big movie is they did some work in the past several, like maybe 8 years, 10 years fly by for me now. Back when you used to say, oh, that feels like 10 years ago, and now that's nowhere near 10 years ago, but I think it's within the past decade. They brought her back. They made her Captain Marvel, where she'd previously been Ms. Marvel. Right. And it was through the writer Kelly Sue DeConnick, who actually has a Blink and You Miss It cameo in this film, and built up around her new stories of Captain Marvel was this community called the Carol Corps, and it was a fanatical, fun group of fans who were really big on the message that brought to by Captain Marvel. And it from the outside, I wasn't reading the comics, but some of this would find its way into me. I'm like, that sounds great. That's what I want out of comics. Right. I want fun, inspirational hero type stories. So I tried the comics, and it was kind of the same deal. It's like, I liked that, but I didn't love that. The stories themselves weren't grabbing me as much. And then they rebooted, because Marvel keeps doing that at number ones. And then the next number one was a little bit better, but it was kind of the same feeling. And then whereas they have her protege Ms. Marvel, and love that right away, because the character was just a little more warm and fun. And I felt like, there are moments in this where you see it. Yeah. And especially with Brie Larson, my first experience with Brie Larson was with the television show United States of Terra, which was one of those Showtime dramedies. But in it, her character was very comic, and she had a great comedic style, and it wasn't even that far off from the moments we get in this. And it's just like, I know that's there, and you just kept holding it back because you decided this character needed to not know her past when the movie started. And I can understand, there's a story there that could be compelling. I'm not sure that they made it compelling enough.
Yeah, no, I agree. But I want to talk about something else that this movie did, and basically this. Do you think that setting this movie in the 90s helped this movie, or did it hurt it? Or was it just kind of like a net neutral?
Yeah, and I think from there's two levels of the question, whether setting it in the past of the MCU or in the 90s specifically. So I'll talk about the 90s specifically.
Yeah. Sure.
Sometimes and sometimes not. And part of it is obviously the 90s were a very formative time for you and I. So some of it's just give me those nostalgia juices. But sometimes it's what you have happen when you set a movie in the past, especially in a past that hasn't been as explored. It's just starting to be what we now go to as the past for our culture.
Right.
It's
finally moved past the 80s. So
yeah. It's kind of like, haha, wasn't it funny the way things were back then? Which is in a way that's what you do when you're telling a current one that's like, haha, this is the 90s. Remember the 90s? That's not what you do when you're like really dedicated to having the feeling of a decade. So you get the scene where the CD-ROM takes forever to load, which was a funny scene. You know, there was laughter throughout the theater, but it's also a very much winky wink. Ha ha! This is the 90s, huh? You know, she's wearing flannel, even though there's no real reason for her to put on just like accessories. She didn't wear it as clothes. Like, yeah, she put on.
Also, she grabbed it off a mannequin and it fit perfectly. But
yeah, but I mean, that's something that you just have to accept movies.
Yeah,
and frankly, also not hard for me to accept that Brie Larson has a figure not, unusual for mannequins.
Fair enough.
But yeah, it's like, yeah, I get her putting on the pants and the shirt and the jacket, but why would you also just tie something around your waist other for any reason? Like, it's the 90s. I mean, I suppose you can no prize that it's like she dressed herself the way the mannequin was dressed because that's what she figured this culture was like. Sure. But it just, there were moments where setting it in the 90s just very much seemed like, remember the 90s? And I don't know, that was both like, sometimes funny, but also kind of took me out of it a bit.
Yeah, no, I mean, and that's, I mean, the reason I wanted to ask this was because for me, the 90s was in this movie a source for references and jokes, but there was no kind of like deeper character connection. There was no story connection to say in this 90s that really helped this movie. We think about, or I think about Guardians, and the music in Guardians is very specific and it's a very nostalgic character purpose. It's very tied to that movie, to that character's journey. The music in this one, the references in this one, the time period in this one, I don't think they used it to really tell a different story about the character. And they could have. The one part they touched upon was how women were not allowed to fly combat missions in 1989, which is absolutely true. And they weren't allowed to fly combat missions until I think the first one was the late 90s. I think it was during Bosnia, but I'm not positive about that. Don't quote me on that. But the point is that you could tell a very specific story about that. But this story was not about that. And they could have used the time period to tell something that dovetailed more with the character than I think they did. Because let's be honest, a lot of the stuff that we see about kind of, like we see the men, we see some of the men making, lewd come-ons to her or mocking her or whatever. That still happens today. You don't need to set that in the 90s for that to happen. Like, let's be honest here. So, I don't think the 90s really added anything beyond some jokes. And I think it could have. And I think they just didn't.
Yeah, and it's kind of like what the X-Men movies have been doing since the sort of reboot. It's like, we're just put decade trappings in each one. And it went from the 60s to the 70s to the 80s, and then next one, if it ever comes out, apparently it was set in the 90s. And it's like,
I think it's coming out in a couple of weeks, actually.
We'll see. And I think that's the thing, and I think that's what this movie did. Now, the next question is, does it need to be set in the past? And I think that speaks to what they were trying to do, and I think in some ways maybe what they were trying to do too much. They wanted to set this before any of the MCU, and like that could have happened anytime as long as because not before the entire MCU. Ant-Man is still older than this.
Well, and Captain America.
No, of course, yes, absolutely. But like, really, all you need is before Iron Man shows up on the scene.
Yes.
Except that it seems like they wanted to tell a story of a younger Nick Fury, which that too could have been like, okay, well, if it's about Nick Fury in this certain age, then what's the 90s for Nick Fury? Except that, like, we're not really experiencing it through his level,
Yeah.
So really, it's just like we wanted Carol Danvers to have this origin experience in the past so that when we introduce her into the bigger Avengers world, she is a top dog, high level, superhero. Right. And I think that's what was motivating it more, because they know that there's going to be a talent drain, so to speak. There's probably not going to be a Captain America or an Iron Man after this. Maybe they were planning for Thor. That one I wonder if still up in there. It's like, so we need somebody that's right there now, not somebody that's starting out. So let's set her in the past. And that's fine, except that I think it's part of what also held this movie back a bit is that a lot of what they are doing is trying to get to the end point of the movie. By the end of this movie, Captain Marvel will be the strongest character in the Marvel universe. And we don't necessarily get enough growth for that to feel as exciting as as I think they want it to be.
Yeah, there's a bit of moving the pieces on the chessboard to set up what is to come of this movie, and I think you're right. I think that did hold it back. I kind of enjoyed the younger Nick Fury story. For me, it kind of worked that that character would become the Nick Fury that we see, having experienced this. But that's not the point of the movie. Should not have been to tell the Nick Fury story. The point of the movie should have been to tell the Carol Danvers story. Mm-hmm. And I think it succeeded much better at the Nick Fury part than at the Carol Danvers part.
Yeah, and especially because she's not going to age, and the physiology or why
Whatever.
she got her powers
Yeah.
will completely explain that. But yeah, again, since we're not going to see a older Carol Danvers, at least physically, it didn't have to be over 20 years ago. Right. So for the 90s, it's just really it's like, and maybe that's like, well, we need to tell a bit of a different story, a different setting, and we've talked about that with previous stories where they're going to different worlds, whether that's the spiritual places or high school, and they're like, hey, let's go to the 90s. And I just some of it was fun. I just don't know if it needed to happen, but just the moving the chess pieces is the big part. And I think this happened in previous films too. Whenever it feels like a lot of their changes are motivated more by what they need the character to be for the franchise needs, more often than not, those don't feel as exciting and as organic as just telling the story. And some of this could just be the unfortunate part of shoving this movie in between the two big Avengers movies. And I feel like both this and Ant-Man and the Wasp have a bit of that feeling. It's like, I'm here now. You guys brought me here, and now you're trying to dial it all the way back. And first time seeing Ant-Man and the Wasp, that actually worked because it's like, I just saw everybody die, so something kind of fun is working. But now it's just like, I want to be here. You can't bring me back down. You or at least not. You'll have to ease it in. And so that's the kind of feel like, so much of this was we need to skip steps with Captain Marvel. She needs to be awesome to start and even more awesome at the end. Where unlike, say, like Thor is probably, the other strongest member of the Marvel Universe. In his first movie, he is brought low. And it's all about getting that up. And that for her, it's just like, no, she's got to be literally flying through spaceships by the end of this movie.
She is never brought as low as Thor is in the first movie, and or in the third movie. And I think that I think that kind of does, as you say, her journey is from awesome to more awesome. There's never a dip down there, basically.
And it's just unfortunate because the scenes are there, like they're the moments, when she's like talking to Nick Fury about prove you're not a Skrull, and telling him like that she's not, just in that quick little line delivery of a Skrull cannot do that. Like that's just
that's great.
Carol I want to see. That's like she's having fun when she at the Skrull in the fight. That's fun. And it just every time she's getting there, they don't. They have to go back to either a bit of a blank slate because she doesn't know what she's doing and she's just a soldier trying to complete her mission. And also, but we can't forget that she is mega awesome and is always going to be mega awesome. And it's just like if you just let it just feels like the movie wasn't allowed to breathe enough so that the things that are truly enjoyable and great about it could just be that. But it just it felt like it was trying to do too much for me to just truly embrace it.
Okay. Well, let's take a break. And when we come back, let's talk about our favorite parts of the movie.
Now, I don't really need these to see, but
they do kind of complete the look.
Don't you think?
All right, and we're back, and we're going to talk about our favorite parts of the movie. Andy, what was your favorite part of the movie?
So, and we both briefly discussed this, so let's do it for the people listening.
Yeah.
I found it hard to pick a big standout sequence for this film.
Yeah.
I do have an answer, and we'll get to it, but it just doesn't seem like it had something big and fresh that really pulled me in. Like, I do like some of the bigger action sequences. I do like when she was escaping from the Skrulls.
Yeah.
I do like when she's fighting the Kree in Captain Marvel's lab. I'm not as excited about it when she's flying through space and stuff.
Yeah, I think that could have been done cooler.
Yeah,
I think is the way to put it. Yeah.
But even those scenes it feels like things we've seen before. Now, I like superhero action, so some of that, it's cool, but just there isn't something that is really exciting. So for me, I felt like the best sequence was at Maria Rambeau's home.
Yeah, that was mine too. Yeah, go on.
Well, then it must be true.
Yes.
So we get a few elements of that. So first you get, Maria, and Monica kind of reminding of Carol who she is, and you start to feel her turning and embracing her past. And then we also get Talos as sneaking in and all that, and Ben Mendelsohn is really funny in those moments.
Yeah, I'd say Ben Mendelsohn's my MVP of this movie, the secret MVP of this movie. However, Disney must have got him in a 2-for-1 deal after he did Rogue One, and they just were like, hey, you can do this one right afterwards. No, I love Ben Mendelsohn, and the reason why I love that scene in the house is because it has a couple different layers. It has her with Maria when you actually get some emotion, not from her, but from other characters remembering her. And that's where they mine emotion for the character there. But then you also get another layer of emotion because you start to reveal what's actually going on with the Skrull. And Ben Mendelsohn and Talos there are, one, very funny, but two, you kind of start to get it's like this was a trick, this was a trap, and he sells that, I think, really well. And I think he kind of really starts to get into the Skrull are actually the victims here. And I mean, it's at that point you're mostly convinced, but not entirely. I still thought there might be a double betrayal coming. I kind of thought for a while the movie was going to do they're both bad because they're Skrull, and I'm used to the Skrull also being bad. But then I was really sold when they got up to the lab and T found his family. That was the part I was like, oh wait, no, they're actually doing the Skrull are just good. Okay. And
what's worse is that we're already on board with him and their plight at the home of Maria Rambeau, even without knowing that his motivation is to save his family, just motivation to save his people and to be separated from this war that has been on. I thought that was a really effective twist, and what also helps make it effective is what we were talking about before. We already like him more than we liked any of those Kree guys, right? So, if they're suddenly flipping, it's no, you should actually cheer for us. It's good. Actually, I'm good with that because I already his banter when she was a captive, his banter when he was fighting Nick Fury. All of that is much more interesting than anything that you gave us with, Jude Law and those others. So cool. I'm on board if that's actually what we're going to root for. And plus, it's just more interesting tales that, let's just try to, we're just trying to now find a place to live is probably a little bit more interesting than we need to find this thing for the Empire.
Right. No, and I agree. I think and that's another kind of story that I think they could have done more with. One of the things about it is we never really got to see what exactly the Skrull were doing to the Kree. How were they fighting back? We were just told they were terrorists. We never saw anything. And a lot of this movie kind of relies on the Kree Skrull war, but we don't see a lot of it. We see them fight once, and we hear that Ronan and his accusers basically, I guess, bomb planets to eradicate them. But we don't see a lot of it. So some of the twist there, I like. And I think Mendelsohn sells it really well, but also that's another twist that kind of doesn't fully land because again, we don't have enough of the emotional connection to it. Though I think that one lands for me more than the personal character twist because again, it's a little simpler because you get Mendelsohn and his you get Talos and his family. And so that's a little more understandable right there. But we don't know what this war means to everyone there.
And what also works for us is that not only does it put us more on the side of the more engaging character, who also in that scene was funny with the cat. He's terrified.
Oh, he's great with the cat. Yeah,
that's great.
You mean the Flurkin?
Yeah, I mean at this point we just think he doesn't know what a cat is.
Right,
but yeah,
exactly.
it's great stuff. But also it now gives Captain Marvel motivations that we can get behind.
Exactly.
Again, she's not really searching for her past, and again, because we've seen more touches of her past than she has, we're not even as like, oh, we need to know what's happening. I think most people watching that, even if you don't have much history with the character, which I also would say is most people watching, kind of know it's like these scenes that we're seeing of her on Earthling type stuff. That's her past. We get that. But yeah, and then like her finding the light speed drive. I don't care, whatever. That's just yeah. But
it's a MacGuffin.
Yeah, it's a MacGuffin,
and
for a side of a warfare
fact,
that we don't know. Okay,
right. And of course, the secret to the light speed drive was the earliest MacGuffin in the Marvel universe, the Tesseract. You know, which I did kind of laugh at because I was like, oh yeah, okay, that makes sense. Why not?
Yeah, but helping refugees find a home. Yeah, that's big time hero stuff. So yeah,
absolutely.
Just that switch, suddenly gives us some investment in the heroes, mission now in the way that we didn't have before. We wanted her to find her past, because we like her a bit, but also because like the sooner she finds her past, the sooner she becomes Captain Marvel, and that's what we want.
Yeah.
But yeah, giving her a mission that is more heroic, I think was a big part of it too. So that was it. Obviously, I think the biggest crowd pleasing moment, certainly, the people I was sitting next to, is when the goose is loose. So I just want to give a little thought to that.
Oh yeah. When or the other one is when Sam Jackson points him at at some of the Kree, and then he doesn't do anything, and it's like he's like, what's wrong with this thing?
So yeah, I think I love Talos in this, but yes, I think I'll be the 151st person to say Goose steals a lot of the scenes, and A+. I don't have a problem with that.
No, me neither. I mean, kind of go. I guess we're about to go into flaws here, so let me hit one that we haven't talked about yet. We've kind of hinted around this, but a lot of the twists in this movie, we kind of see coming from a long way away. We see them. They showed the chip in her head in the very first scene, and I was like, okay, so that holds her back, right? That's like a way of controlling her. Like, I mean, like, and Jude Law, the way he's talking right at the beginning, you're like, this guy's kind of gaslighting her, isn't he? You kind of know, like, okay, well, the Kree are going to be kind of bad there. The Skrull being unambiguously good did catch me by surprise. I thought they would do, again, they're both bad.
I do like that in later scenes, like he absolves her of like the fact that she like killed a bunch of Skrulls at the beginning of the movie. Is like, my hands aren't clean, and I think that, and obviously we don't see it; it's showing. But I think it was an effective line to tell us, he's probably done some bad stuff too. But now
absolutely,
he's just a guy who lost a war, wants to go home.
Yes. And but because we see a lot of these twists coming and the movie takes so long to catch up to them, it's frustrating waiting for that moment, and that plays into the whole amnesia stuff. Like, one of the worst parts of amnesia is that usually the viewer knows what's happening before the character does, which then means you're waiting for the character to catch up to you. And that's one of my least favorite feelings in a movie, is waiting for the characters in the movie to catch up to where I am, because I feel that rarely that is done in a way that's entertaining. So,
yeah, and also to kind of actually, that's a flawed conversation. But the other thing, just quickly on the Skrulls, ties into our earlier discussion of, I thought another reason why they had to set this in the distant past, because we heard there was going to be Skrulls, would be the idea that the Skrulls were going to be villains in later movies who had been here all along. Now,
I thought they were going to do. Yeah, I thought that would be their way to do like a next Avengers without galaxy saving consequences. You could just have secret wars or whatever it's called, secret invasion.
Yeah, I think it's invasion. Yeah. And look, I mean, they still could maybe. This handful of Skrulls were good, but there were some other guys. But yeah, we're no longer.
Well, one got left behind. One got left behind. If you count the Skrulls, 2 died. Talos escaped, but there was 4 that landed. So 1 was never accounted for.
There you go. So he's, I mean, problem is you can't really do the thing like he infiltrated Shield because we already know another bad group infiltrate Shield, but the president or something like that.
Sure, yeah.
Maybe he's Secretary Ross. But yeah, so that's just one thing. Like another reason why I thought it needed to be set in the distant past, which the 90s is now because we're old, man. Was to lay the groundwork of a Skrull invasion, and now maybe not so much. But I think it was still a good decision by the movies to play with our anticipation on that. And obviously some of that is, if you know Marvel, Skrulls were traditionally the baddies. But even if you don't know, they're the green sinister looking guys, and they're just the name Skrull sounds like like a more warlike creature. So I think that switch actually not only played well, I think it was a good decision for this film.
I did as well. Like I thought that was a good decision too.
No, so because if the Kree just stay good, they're just the Green Lantern Corps, right? Because that's another thing. Like her origin is very Green Lantern. This alien from another planet, dies in front of her and imbues her with these, spacefaring powers, right? So
I guess this time it's the engine that imbues her with the powers or whatever.
Right. But the engine she was using, and she died in her arms. So very, very Green Lantern, which so much of the film is very something else. A fight on top of a train has been done better in other superhero movies. No, the Skrull aspect of it was still kind of fun. Like again, a lot of it I enjoyed. I'm going to watch this film again, but it's just like the next Captain Marvel movie, I think, is going to be so much better because it won't be hamstrung by some of these choices. All right.
I think it certainly has the chance to be a lot better. You could always pull an Iron Man 2 and just fall flat on its face. So,
all right. Biggest flaws.
I mean, I think we've talked a lot about what I consider my biggest flaws. I don't know if I have any more to add to this, and I don't want to seem like I am just didn't like this movie because I did like this movie. It's just, this is a movie that when I think about it, there's stuff that I can think about ways that it could have been better or there were missed opportunities. And that's kind of what, where I'm focusing on. But for me, the biggest flaw comes back to the amnesia. I think that was the one decision that hamstrung everything else for me.
Yeah. Agreed fully. Just another one apart, and it's kind of another topic, is that this is kind of the prequel for the MCU. And prequels are often not something I'm particularly interested in. And I think that creates some of the specific scenes that I don't like as much, because they're doing what prequels try to do. They're trying to answer some questions of little things that, for one, I didn't really ever care about. And moreover, in this movie, they just feel tacked on. We got to check that box. So the biggest one is
Avenger.
So absolutely coming up with the word. Now we know why the name Avengers. I never cared. I mean, obviously it's a weird name.
That was so corny. Yeah, I just gotta say that was so corny.
That was a bit eye rolly. The other one is how Nick Fury loses his eye.
Yeah. Though I thought they one thing they did, and I realized they were going to do pretty early on. I was like, they're going to make a lot of they're going to do a lot of kind of fakes where it's going to be oh, this is where he loses his eye, and then not do it. And they the first time they did it, I was like, that's how they're going to make this kind of fun. But I also think it would have been funny had he just not lost his eye in this movie, and they just left it a mystery.
Yeah, no, I think it would have been better, and I especially think it could have been better than what they did. Now, I'm not like, oh, you ruined Nick Fury like some, the piss babies out there, but I just felt like, and I don't even have a problem if Goose is the reason, except that it's the way they did it. Mission over, we did it, yeah, kitty, ran.
Right.
It just felt like, okay, now we're gonna do it. And even his reaction, he's not reacting like somebody who just had his eye gouged out. It's like, oh, it's a scratch. Now, I mean, I think they're playing with infection and all of that. Right. Although I don't know why this alien infection would just stop at the eye. But yeah, he's just kind of oh, don't worry, it'll clear up. And, Talos. Yeah, and it's just it felt a little too comedic and also tacked on. Okay, it's time. We just got to do that part. Whereas, because he's flirking out, he's doing it because he's a cat, and maybe he grabs him wrong, or something. I'd be fine if it was Goose. I don't feel the fact that a cat took out his eye weakens Nick Fury, but it just felt the way they did it was just well, it's the prequel and we're getting closer to we got to tell that story. And it's you don't, and that's so many things about the prequel. I don't care about Han Solo before he shows up in that bar. I don't care why Darth Vader, wore a black costume. In fact, especially after they told the story, turns out, Darth Vader is more interesting as a villain when he's mysterious. Just in general, prequels are not something of interest to me, and I think this movie isn't fully a prequel. It's just like often it's a story set in the past, but in the moments in which it's trying to say these are how these things were established, this is how he got the pager. It's just like I don't, those moments often don't work for me.
I agree. So I guess we're gonna come back, and when we do, we'll be talking with our special guest about our big idea.
So, Skrulls are the bad guys. And you're a Kree, a race of noble warriors.
Heroes. Noble warrior heroes.
All right, and we're back, and it's time for our big idea.
And begin!
Oh, look at that! Speaking of big ideas, it's I bet you guys were wondering when we'd have the segment, the Christopher segment. Now, we had not gotten a Captain Marvel costume yet, so instead, who are you?
Miss Marvel.
Ms. Marvel, Kamala Khan. He's dressed up like, and we got his hair did today. That's not costume authentic. That's just a choice.
It's a strong choice.
Yes, it was. Christopher, what day is it? What's going on tomorrow?
My birthday.
It's his birthday. This kid is going to be 6 years old tomorrow.
Happy birthday, Christopher.
Yeah, so I figured, we don't have any Captain Marvel bits to do because the pajamas were just a little bit over a price range. But we wanted to say happy birthday for you. Do you want to say anything to anybody? How about you say to Emily, see you later.
See you later.
See you later.
Good night, buddy.
Bye.
And I suppose the other thing I need to do for this segment is introduce our guest. So with us this week is Emily. You may remember her from podcasts past when we talked about the hot guys of the MCU. This week we're going to talk a bit in a different direction, but using similar expertise. Because one thought I had while watching this movie is it's obvious, and I think the right choice that it was very much trying to push a women's empowerment message. And the question would be, how successful was it at that? Did it give that level of inspiration? And I feel like that's an answer that Matt and I can't really answer all that well, because if we sit here and say, I don't know if it really worked, well, it wasn't trying to work on us. So while having just one woman here may not give us a full representative sample, it's better than nothing. So Emily, what do you think? How well did this movie's theme of female empowerment connect with you?
Wait, I thought I was here to talk about LA's public transportation system.
That's the next segment.
But
first,
that's my area of expertise, right?
That maybe only in the 90s were people using trains that look like the trains that are in my city right now, like right down to the color scheme.
I think they might be using the trains here maybe even more than they were then, but I wasn't here then, so who knows. But yes, to answer your actual question, I think, I don't know, it's tricky. I think it worked to an extent. I'm not sure it had quite the same impact for me in that way that like Wonder Woman did, because Wonder Woman, you also have all the other Amazons and like that's or whatever they're called. I'm also like a super casual fan here.
No, you nailed it.
Nice. But yeah, and then that one bit at towards the end where she's sort of doing her like, my name is Carol or whatever, as like great as it is, there's also when it's all the shots of her getting back up, which feels very Spider-Man-y. It also feels a lot like a Nike commercial or something to me. Like it definitely had that like inspirational commercial vibe of like, we are women and strong, which
I mean, Just Do It would have fit that moment too.
Yeah, yeah, I think it would. So that was something that I like definitely noticed in feeling like that. But otherwise, I mean, in the movie, it was definitely, You know, it's cool that I think the way she had her personality wasn't like super stereotypical, but also wasn't like way in the other direction of just being like a strong female character has to be like tough and I had a lot of brothers and that's why I'm like this, you know, type vibe that you often would get in the past, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, they would just give her male traits and then a female name.
Right.
Yeah, so it's like now it's a strong woman because she's like a man. And obviously she's like physically strong, but she also has a little bit of an attitude and stuff like that. That's different. I liked the daughter of Maria Monica, the girl, you know, that sort of showed even within the movie how it is to have someone to look up to, which I think is valuable. The other thing though is like at the end, the credits, that's where I almost felt more like, you know, when you're, well, not when you guys are a kid, but when you're a kid and you're like, hey, that one's a girl. Like, that's cool. Like I'd see, you know, the director and the and writer story by, like, I even like whispered to my husband, I was like, girl.
Yeah, that's definitely something
like, which
that
was very
I
much.
never. Yeah, that's something I never thought about as a kid because I guess I just.
Yeah, no, all our lives we've been fed male power fantasies of people that look like us, which is kind of why, you know, this discussion is, you know, we can talk about it a bit and, you know, we will, but people are out there saying, you know, why is this important? Why is that? It's like, well, yeah, this once, you whiny piss babies, that was just once. There's going to be one with a woman, but, you know, the bigger question is how well did this one land? And yeah, I kind of got the same feeling as you. What Emily was getting at, but again with the caveat that my opinion is lesser than because what I just said. I mean,
your opinion's lesser than mine for a lot of reasons.
Yeah, well, I mean, one that is more valuable is that I know what an Amazon and a Cree are, but you know, that's just the thing.
Don't be that guy, Andy. Don't be that guy.
Yeah, it would be great if you guys knew
I'm not
a
putting
woman
her
who
to
like
the test of like, well, who was the inker in Uncanny X-Men 176. You know, Amazon as Wonder Woman is a pretty low bar to clear. But more,
it's too bad you guys don't know a woman who like actually likes comics.
I mean, no.
Yeah,
I mean, that we get on the podcast? No.
Right. I mean,
on short notice is the other thing. So,
but it's more like it felt like a bit like the I guess the concern I had is it felt a little bit more like the commodification of female empowerment, like you've been, you know, seeing in Nike commercials. It seemed very, in some instances, and I think that scene in particular, and maybe because it was spoiled in the trailers, felt a little bit by the book. And I think in part why her getting up in each iteration of her past didn't land as much is because we don't see her as a character who needed to get up throughout the movie. She's very much up. You know, she's not somebody who took a lot of, you know, hits and got knocked down and this is her moment to finally rise. She was pretty highly capable throughout the entire film.
Yeah, especially because we really only get those brief flashes of her past and like only in those instances where she's knocked down, but it's like you see the aftermath. So I think what worked almost more than the like typical girl power scene is just, I mean, the fact that the movie throughout isn't like, except for that part, isn't like necessarily knocking you over the head with it. It's just sort of, she just is, you know. Right. I also liked granted this was like one of my first like favorite songs as a kid, but you know, the fight scene that's to Just a Girl by No Doubt, like that song is my jam. I also feel like that was a missed opportunity not using that in the trailer. I feel like that's
I think they wanted to save that one because I feel like that's their kind of like highlight scene of the movie.
Sure, but I mean, not necessarily the scene, but just the song, just the needle drop as sort of a like tongue-in-cheek, like this is 90s, this is girl power, you know, type thing. Could have been kind of fun, and showed, I think, the little bit of the playful side that the movie had that I feel like the trailers didn't really represent in the same way. Like it's not like it's Guardians playful, but it has some of that. It has some winks.
Well, no, I mean, yeah, and her characteristics, you know, she's allowed to be funny. She's not just the badass, you know, it's she has a bit of, you said the getting up is a bit like Spider-Man, but her humor is also a bit like Spider-Man. The way that she can't even stop, you know, during a fight, she can't stop from making a joke. Like when the when she's breaking out of the Skrull prison and the Skrull growls at her and she growls back, early in the movie. She can't like stop herself from playing around like that. And so that like, it's like that is more representation of her character in some ways than the getting back up scene. Like I feel that the movie did a better job sketching in her character in like the little moments, like that, like how she interacts with Maria Rambeau, how she interacts with Monica, how she just kind of deals with Earth than it did like in that like emotional catharsis at the end there, which did not feel very cathartic to me. But again, it wasn't pitched entirely to me. So.
Yeah, I think the more cathartic thing rather than that big scene to me is I actually did like that in like sort of the one big moment where she has like the single tear going down her face, because obviously there's the whole like, oh, she's emotional, and I've even seen people say on Twitter and whatnot like she wasn't really that emotional, but is that like a nod to people just automatically assuming women are too emotional? But it kind of also shows she's allowed to have those feelings and still have feelings but still fight through it, and you don't have to like break down crying to do something. You can still just have it kind of come out because it just naturally happens.
No, I think that's a good observation. And
so you liked the Just a Girl drop, like that worked for you. And my wife, am I clear? That's what
yes.
Yes. And my wife really loved it too, and I think part of the same deal. It was nostalgic as well as moment.
Yeah, I mean, when I was like in kindergarten, that was fully my jam.
For me, I felt like it was a little too on the nose. It's just like and again, this is why different perspectives, and if women came out of that moment feeling and especially we've talked about this with several podcasts before, a key market for these movies is children. If young girls came out of that moment being all then yes, it worked. For me, it's like using CCR in your Vietnam scene. It was just a little too close to we get it.
But CCR in the Vietnam scene, CCR in the Vietnam scene only doesn't work because it's been used so many times. How many times has Just a Girl been used when a girl is kicking ass?
And the only other time I can even that movie being in a movie is Clueless.
Yeah, I don't see so much that it was overused. It's just I don't know. It felt like like maybe you try to find just a slightly deeper cut or something. But again,
I mean,
need to. Right?
The movie definitely went out of its way to get a lot of the women-led bands of the time. We had Garbage in there, we had Heart in there, we had we already talked about No Doubt, TLC, Salt and Pepper was in there. I remember briefly.
In fact, they probably shouldn't have used Nirvana in that one scene. They should have just stuck with a woman's soundtrack, especially because there's no reason for Nirvana to be playing in that scene. Just, really nitpicky, off topic. The music wasn't just backing music. It was being heard by the Supreme Intelligence herself. And Carol Danvers never would have heard that song before unless, I don't know, her and Nick Fury listened to it in the car. Because, she left Earth way before it was ever recorded. So,
nerd!
But no, and I think one moment that I think really landed was during her final confrontation with Yanrog. I really appreciated how the man tries to set the agenda for how this battle is going to work, how you're going to impress me, even with the condescending, I'm so proud of you, and she does not listen to it. And both call back to the great Indiana Jones just shooting the guy with the swords, but also no, I don't need to lessen myself to deal with you.
I mean, she said nothing to prove.
Yeah, and
points out.
that is such a thing too, to be like, no, you like, moving the goalposts, like, oh, you can only succeed if you're fighting me hand to hand for no real reason. Like,
right.
People have different skills that, obviously this is like an extreme example because she has superpowers, but there's all sorts of things like, well, can you do it without doing this thing that you're good at and I'm not? That way I'll beat you.
Right.
Yeah, or just like every girl in the classroom has to act a little dumber so the guys in the classroom feels a little bit better. Just like in moments like that, and I felt like it did really well. It's just I felt like moments in like getting up over and over again montage, which I loved in the trailer, but it just didn't really work in the movie. In part because it just felt like tacked on, like it was this box
it felt just a little too. Yeah, that's the thing. It felt very polished marketing. It's like it's like what you'd see in an ad commercial. Which can be effective. I don't think it was completely without effect. I just don't think it was as powerful as it was in the trailer because it's perfectly sized for a trailer, but in the middle of a movie, it doesn't meet the expectations and the buildup that we had for the entire movie.
And also, like I was getting at, she doesn't really have the hero brought low moment that is usually part of these stories. So then now she's finally rising. It's like, well, I mean, when was she not rising? She was, she had a chip on her neck that was keeping her from being all powerful, but she still took down a ship of Skrulls with her hands tied. She's still, Nick Fury was taking orders from her, throughout. Like there was never a moment where she really felt like she was knocked down. I mean, yeah, she lost a training fight with Yanrog. She was ambushed and captured, but these weren't really humbling moments for her. So that now we have this big stirring rising action. It didn't land with me because it didn't seem to fit any other reason other than it's time for that. And using just a girl in the fight scene also kind of felt like that too. It's like Marvel's like, see, we're doing this, and for one, like, good, do it. I'm all in favor of it, but it does kind of also lead to the next area of discussion is it took them a long time to get here.
Yeah, it really did. And I don't think there's a good reason for it. If I could, I'll let you talk in 1 minute, Emily. I just want to say one quick thing about what Andy just said, which is it took them a long time to get here.
Oh, you're fine. I was just, your video went away from me, so that.
Okay. Well, Emily kind of broke up for me, but maybe she's still here, and I'm going to talk while she comes back. Basically, look, it took a really long time for Marvel to make a movie with a female lead, with a woman that's the main character of their movies. I think this is the 21st movie. Yeah, 21st movie. So, and one of the questions is like, what took them so long? And I don't think they have a good excuse. They have excuses. I don't think any of them actually are good. And I think one of the things about this movie is that this feels like a movie that could have been made 3 or 4 years ago and would have fit seamlessly in with where the MCU was at that time. And I feel like the MCU has started to move past that a bit, especially with that like run of movies with Spider-Man and Thor Ragnarok and Black Panther and Infinity War. This feels like a throwback to some of the movies they were making a couple of years ago. And in some ways it feels like a step back, which is a shame because had this come out couple years ago, had this come out before Wonder Woman, I think this would have resonated with me a lot more. And I say this having liked the movie. I just, their weight, I don't think helped it.
Yeah, and I think the Wonder Woman thing is instructive because Wonder Woman beat them to it. And to be clear, Wonder Woman always should have been the first one. As bad as it was that it took Marvel 21 years, part of it also is they did not have a Wonder Woman level character. It's worse that it took Wonder Woman forever, except that it's good that they didn't make it back when they made awful movies. And they at least when Wonder Woman came out, they were able to make it with the director that they were and the story they were. But, that one was able to, be the first movie and really hit upon a lot of the themes that this movie wanted to hit upon. And my thing is, now that you're second, you have to do more, and I don't feel like they did more. It's just like it was a little bit of us too.
And one other thing, you said Marvel doesn't have a Wonder Woman. I feel like Marvel's best women characters are all in the properties that they didn't own. There are in the X-Men. You got Jean Grey, you got Storm. And then Fantastic Four. Well, maybe not there, but
that's the one. But they created their own, right? Black Widow. A Black Widow movie could have happened at any time.
Absolutely.
Iron Man 2.
Right, but I think that's their excuse, and I think the reason why it falls so short is because we saw them take D-tier characters in the Guardians of the Galaxy and make a movie out of that. Why are they taking the chance on them and not on just any woman at the center?
Speaking of the women at the center, do you have any thoughts on why it took so long, and if this movie was I don't know, worth the wait, so to speak, or if it led up to the expectations that it ended up setting for it because of that length.
Yeah, I mean, I do agree with Matt that it could have come out earlier, and I think it would have been like, I feel like they're kind of being like, oh well, because she's gonna be a big deal in Endgame and stuff, but I feel like they could have pulled that off still by having it come out. I don't have the timeline well enough down, but like it could have come out a while ago, and then had sequels where she's off in galaxies doing galaxy and then we don't hear from her for, you know, and then she comes back in Endgame. Like that could still have an impact in the same way that like Ant-Man isn't in Infinity War, and I still haven't seen Ant-Man and the Wasp, so I, you know,
he's gonna be in the next one.
Yeah, but you know, like you don't have to, like they could have had a reason of, you know, like we were like, oh yeah, well she's all the way that way. That's why she never ran into the Guardians or whatever. I feel like
it's
it wouldn't
a
have
big
been
freaking universe. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. But I mean, like, there's a lot of reasons you can make, but I think the simplest reason is they just were not motivated to make a movie with a woman at the center of it. And
not only were they not motivated, like the biggest reason is the guy who ran Marvel Comics, Ike Perlmutter, would not allow them to. He just flat out said, "We are not making a movie starring a woman." And he cited failures like Catwoman and Elektra as though those should be what it holds up. But yeah, it was because there were women.
It's like, well, then we shouldn't make
not
a
because
man
they were
because
terrible,
Daredevil
terrible
was
movies.
bad.
Right. Yeah. No. Exactly. And I think some stuff has come about like Perlmutter, like fairly recently that shows that he was a pretty loathsome human being, if I remember right. But I might be confusing him with other people
about him. But even now, more so stories are coming out.
Yeah. Okay. I thought so. But I mean, right. But the point is, that's some institutional rot at the center, and I don't think they should just get the pass because they have now done it. And what I really hope to see in the next phase of movies is a lot more women-led movies, because I think they have the opportunity to do that. And I think that way one character doesn't have to carry the expectations and the burdens of, like all of them.
Yeah, and I think
this movie might have been in a more comfortable place if it also wasn't trying to be like the Black Panther of women.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if this story fits it or even necessarily the character. And it does in some ways. And again, I've seen reactions from women that are like, yes, this, pumps me up. And I think the movie intentionally was very trying to do that. And I think it is effective in some areas and maybe less effective than others. But yeah, my whole point is if you're taking 21 movies to finally do this, then you need to have a bit more to say than, what this movie I think ultimately did.
Right.
But again, that's my take, and how much it's worth is up to other people.
Yeah, and I'll second that. So, but
one area I think that the MCU does deserve some credit for when it comes to representation with women is that we see in this movie, and it started to happen in some more of the more recent movies, is they've been casting a lot of older actresses that were big in like the 80s and 90s that have basically been pushed out of the major Hollywood movie system. Now, some of them, are still working actresses. You'll see them in indies. Maybe, they're working, in theater. But I'm talking about like in the multiplex, a lot of movies just had no place for them because they committed the high sin of getting older. And also because the kind of movies that they used to be able to be in are not made, maybe possibly due to the fact that movies like Marvel are being made. I reject that, but I want to say it anyway, because I don't think Marvel was ever making the movies that they used to be in.
Yeah, I think that's more a business model change to where those type of movies moved more indie. But
so for this movie, obviously, we get Annette Bening, and she was great. Not only does she project that feeling of authority, somebody that you could believe that Carol would look up to. I like that she got to vamp in the scene that otherwise shouldn't have been scored to Nirvana. These reminders, like, man, Annette Bening's great. Michelle Pfeiffer, Glenn Close, she's nominated for Oscars in movies that nobody sees, right? Angela Bassett, Marissa Tomei, and Alfre Woodward, like all of them started to come back, and I was like, I guess the first question is this a real thing, and what do you think about it?
I mean, it's definitely a real thing. But go on, Emily.
I would say, yeah, cool, great. But is this, and keep in mind, I've not seen most of the DC movies, but I mean, Wonder Woman had Robin Wright. Doesn't Superman have Diane Lane? I assume Batman might have someone, but I don't know. Aquaman has Nicole Kidman. Maybe the roles aren't as good, but like they also exist, and it's not like the Glenn Close role in Guardians of the Galaxy is like particularly memorable.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's kind of what I was going to say. Like, I feel like superhero movies have kind of, maybe always cast some actors that people haven't seen in a while or that haven't been making big things. But I guess the difference here, and especially, and it's been true of other comic book movies recently, as Emily said, was that it's happening now with, more women. Whereas in, back with like the original Superman, you got old Marlon Brando when no one had seen him in a while. And, but they wouldn't do that with whoever the equivalent actress of the time would be.
Right, like you have Robert Redford and
Winter Soldier. Though his retirement from acting was more self-imposed because he was doing more directing and producing, and then he came out because he wanted his grandkids to see him in a movie. But but my point is kind of like actors have always kind of had these opportunities. They can come out of retirement when they're 70. They can get cast in a movie. They can be in a bigger movie when they're older. Whereas actresses just kind of get pushed aside as they get older, and they don't have to be 70 to get pushed aside. They have to be 45, 50, and, you're right. The Glenn Close part in Guardians was a nothing part, but it's still nice that like they have a nothing part and they're thinking of someone like, let's get Glenn Close.
Yeah, and I'd say I don't think we can credit Aquaman for bringing Nicole Kidman back into our lives.
True.
I think he was kind of there.
Yeah, and for cast, I mean, again, was she at least his mom in flashbacks? Because she is not that much like older than him.
Kidman?
I mean, she's older than him.
But his mom right now. I mean, also in flashbacks.
She's like a year older than Lisa Bonet. Jason.
I mean, flashbacks, and then also later, and then I'm guessing they don't age, so that helps.
Fair enough. Whatever. I don't.
She's only 12 years older than him. Fair point. So,
and again, like basically the same age as his wife. Anyway, go on.
But yeah, with this just in mind, and maybe I was just thinking this because it was cool. Like, yeah, Annette Bening, like she hasn't been in a major movie since like American Beauty. Like she's done, good work in things like 20th Century Women or The Kids Are All Right, but those are smaller indies. And I guess even American Beauty was an indie that's just made a whole lot of money. But like back then, it seemed like she was like going to be in this big thing, an American President, and things like that. And then they don't make Annette Bening movies anymore, so it was really exciting to see her. Michelle Pfeiffer was like, man, we haven't seen her in forever. So I was just thinking, like, is there any other actresses you can think of in the 80s and 90s that you'd like to see, return in an MCU movie? And you don't need to cast the role or anything like that, but feel free if you want to. But is there anybody you thought of, Emily? And obviously you're really young, so maybe none of them have as much meaning for you.
I did have a hard. I was like, I'm glad you asked me first, because I was like, I've got one option, and if one of them picks it, like, I was like, Alicia Silverstone's probably still too young, right? Like, I was.
Well,
just like,
I mean, Marissa
actually, that would kind of
come back in Spider-Man, and it turns out
she's
actually she is older than we were thinking. I mean, I think she's older than
Marissa
Alicia
Tomei's in
Silverstone.
her 50s. I mean, Alicia Silverstone was 18 when Clueless happened, so she's
in her 40s.
got to still be 40s, right?
Yeah,
but anyway,
she's 40s.
The one I thought of was Jamie Lee Curtis.
I had her on my list. Yep.
Okay, and then my panicked backup when just like 5 minutes ago when I was like, there's got to be someone. I was like, maybe Jodie Foster.
I had her on my list too. Yes. Okay. So you got to stop naming people because I only got 2 more. So
good. I don't. That was all I had.
No, because I feel like Andy's going to definitely pick the third one. So.
So I think the one thing with Jamie Lee
I
Curtis
felt like
is
you
just
would
that,
do
like,
Jamie Lee Curtis.
the Halloween franchise is bringing her back. So then maybe Marvel's like, we can't plant that flag.
Well, but I feel, they can't plant the flag, but I also feel like then she's almost someone they can use, would actually be, marketable in a way.
Right.
And I mean, she did have a cameo in this very movie.
She did?
Her papers.
True Lies.
True Lies. God damn it.
Schwarzenegger, True Lies.
Yeah. I've
And
seen that movie. I'll have you know.
There we go.
it's and Jodie Foster. One of the reasons she hasn't appeared in anything for a while is because she got big into directing. So
she's also directing.
Yeah, so that's I think that's one of the reasons that she hasn't been acting as much. She wanted to make.
But like, imagine her as a Thor villain, like Kate Blanchett. Like she could.
Yeah,
she could totally do that.
Yeah. What about you,
Jodie
Andy?
Foster is Hella's girlfriend.
So I was thinking, I don't know if these were rumors or just kind of wishful thinking of the fan community, but back when they were talking about who should play Janet Van Dyne for the Ant-Man sequel, a lot of people were talking about Sharon Stone. And obviously, that would have been a great connection with Michael Douglas to the point where it's like, oh man, I want that to happen. Now, one thing, some people might object is like, well, didn't she turn out to be crazy? And I'm going to say, no, probably what happened, what we're beginning to learn a lot is these women weren't actually crazy at all. They were just being portrayed that way by the powerful bag men that are, helped end their careers. So I'd like to see her come back. She could be a villain in Ant-Man 3, and that might even be a more fun dynamic with Michael Douglas.
That's true.
Can I add something real quick
Sure,
then? Because you reminded me. Well, speaking of people who didn't work a lot because of bag men, let's get Ashley Judd in a Marvel movie.
Yes.
Oh, that's
let's get Ashley Judd in a lot of movies.
Yeah, Ashley Judd.
And she'd be good.
Yeah. No, she would be really good. No, you're right.
Like, get her that
Iron Man
money.
movie, she would be like a really good foil for Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah. Okay, so since you guys left me with a couple, I'm gonna rattle off a few here. We've seen her kind of come back with Stranger Things, but Winona Ryder needs to be in more things because Winona Ryder is amazing. Yeah. In terms of women who can kick absolute ass and who we haven't seen in a while, where's the Uma Thurman revival?
Oh.
Because Uma Thurman again kicks ass. And then other ass kickers who we haven't seen in a while, Demi Moore.
Yes.
So,
wasn't she? I feel like she was in something, not necessarily Marvel, but something like that recently. But I might be fully making that up. I don't know. Hold on.
Demi Moore. I don't think Demi Moore has been in. I looked at Demi Moore's. I looked at Demi Moore's IMDb before I threw out her name, and I don't recognize anything she's been in since like the early 2000s.
Yeah,
actually,
I might be weirdly thinking of like Charlie's Angels or something because I think that came up.
Yeah, she was in Charlie's Angels. Yes.
So maybe, and obviously that was ages ago, but I think that might have just been something that someone talked about recently, and so it was top of mind.
Yeah, and I think with like Uma Thurman. She's still big enough, although I agree we haven't seen her in a while. That she couldn't be in some of these roles we're getting. She can't just
no. She would have to be
she would have to be like a major character.
Yeah, no, she would have to be a Kate Blanchett villain or something like that. Yeah. Which again, she could totally do. Like she's,
she could be like the main foil for Black Widow in the next movie.
Sure.
And like co-headline the movie, Scarlett Johansson, Uma Thurman,
Yeah,
I'd sign up to see that fight.
Absolutely. But yeah, so those were some of the ones I was thinking about. But it was funny because I had a list and Emily took the first couple off of mine. I was like, okay, I'm getting down here. So
all right, so yeah, anybody watching, leave in comments if you have any other ideas or respond to our ideas. Maybe figure out some parts. If you're really big into Marvel, who can play who. Yeah, I think that's all we got for this week. Or do you guys have anything else further to the discussion that we've been having?
No, I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Emily, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And so this is the part where we tell you all the places that you can listen to us and all that. Hopefully you found one of them if you're hearing us. So, subscribe to the podcast on YouTube where we do the videos, or on iTunes and all of that. Our website is infinitystonepodcast.wordpress.com. Matt, don't make me say the Twitter handle.
It's pod_infinity. And, our next podcast. Our next.
I do have a PS I could add if you don't mind.
Yes,
sure. Go for it.
Actually, and also add your PS, but I have one other question for you.
Okay, I was gonna. Perhaps this will overlap, but I was going to do an addendum to the last time I appeared and say Jude Law, hot.
Oh, okay, there we go.
Actually, one question we didn't really get into. Emily, did you like Captain Marvel?
Yeah.
The higher voice shrug suggests a little bit of ambivalence, and that's all right. So yeah,
I
next
mean, to
month,
be honest, like that's how I am with most of the superhero movies.
Yeah,
I'm like, yeah, that was good.
Okay,
enjoyed it.
Anyway, we'll be back next month, and when I say next month, I mean you might the podcast might actually drop in early May because Avengers Endgame comes out April 26th. So even if we see it the very first day and record right away, we might not actually release a podcast until the beginning of May. But that will be our next one. So stay tuned.
All right, and then this is usually how I end the podcast by saying roll credits, but I don't feel like making credits or post credits this week. So the podcast is me and Matt. Thanks to Mark Zemer for doing our graphics, and we own none of the content that you've been seeing or hearing since then. All right, see you next month.